I'm Hasini, and I will be presenting to you my GT project, Tell a Tale of a Trip. So I'm going to explain to you the Wild West, and especially with the Chisholm Trail. So, to give you a quick summary, the Chisholm Trail is a trail connecting Texas and Kansas after the Civil War era, and it was used for cattle or for any goods to travel from Texas to Kansas or likewise. Here's a quick image of the Chisholm Trail, where have a couple of lots of cattle, being transported to Kansas by cowboys. So let me go ahead and show you my research proposal, which will help you understand what this project is all about. So some questions that is our main focus and will guide you are: who created the trail and why? How does it impact us today? And how does it relate to the politics and issues of the time? Some questions that helped us through our research process are: what are some places to look for information? What are some primary and secondary resources? And what are some key people that are related to the trail? Initially, some thoughts that we had on this topic were that it was just an ordinary trail that a person just created to earn some more cash. And we also thought it was just to transport goods of any sort. We were really very wrong. So let's go ahead and take a look at the map real quick. So here's the Chisholm Trail trade route, and it starts in Texas, near southern Texas, which is where all the main cattle were. That's why it says cattle procurement area. So that's where all the cattle and the longhorns were, and from there they were transported all the way up through Oklahoma, through the Indian Territory reservations, to Kansas, to these two main railheads, Ellsworth and Abilene, so they can be transported by railroad to places all over the U.S., mostly in the East, since there was such a high demand there. The trail also avoided the popular states where the Texas cattle were unwelcome, since people were scared of the spreading of diseases, which they should be, because later Texas fever happened and it was an entire quarantine situation. Now let's go ahead and talk about some main artifacts that will help you understand more about this and how it had an impact. So here's some artifacts that illustrate the trail and its legacy. This is a map, and it shows every single town and city that it went through, all the way to Abilene. It shows how it spread throughout the region's impact. This is an artifact of Lizzie E. Johnson, an early Texas cattle queen who was the first woman to drive the Chisholm Trail with her own herd of cattle. This is a book that influences promoted cattle ranching and made people more likely to go on the cattle crossing paths with it. This is another artifact, a statue in the Texas State History Museum, and it displays the various parts of the trail's history. Now I'm going to go ahead and talk to you about the politics of the time. So the Chisholm Trail was impacted greatly by the Civil War. The Texas government put a tax on the Chisholm Trail as a source of income, since after they lost the Civil War, since they were with the Confederates, it took a great toll on them. So this was a main source of income. At the time, many people, civilians, also needed a source of money, since they were also impacted by the Civil War. So they looked into trading and cattle driving. So Texas had a large supply of cattle, which was more specifically the Texas Longhorn, and there was plenty of demand in the East for beef. So they used the Chisholm Trail as a trade route, to Kansas, where there was a railhead to transport the goods. However, as transportation became more advanced with the railroads, the use of the Chisholm Trail was no more. Today, the Chisholm Trail is a historical site for all to see and explore. Now, you might be thinking, why couldn't they just sell it in Texas? Well, in Texas, since there was such a large supply, the demand for it was really, really less. But up in the East, there was zero cattle there. So they transported it from the Chisholm Trail to Kansas, where they could be exported and distributed all over the U.S. The original person who actually created the Chisholm Trail was Jesse Chisholm, which we'll be talking about next. So Jesse Chisholm right here. This is a picture of Jesse Chisholm. So he was an Indian trader, guide, and interpreter. He's famous for the Chisholm Trail. He actually, before the Civil War, he built several trading posts in Oklahoma. He was a Scotch Cherokee fur trader and merchant, so he was half Scotch, half Cherokee. And he actually helped the Texas government, establish treaties with the Cherokee and other Native American tribes, since he had relations with them and was understood their language. He was a very successful person, and he helped. He earned lots of money from this Chisholm Trail. And here's a picture of him. Now let's go and talk about the creation. So the main reason for the Chisholm Trail was to transport goods, as I've cited multiple times, and it was a major route for the Texas livestock. And again, beef was a growing demand in the East because there was not much there was not much demand here in Texas, and it was the state's most potential assets. It was a major source of income to recover from the recent Civil War, which is how Texas got back on its feet. Now, here's a picture of a cowboy tending to a herd of longhorns on a spur of the Chisholm Trail. Now, I'm going to be talking about some frequently asked questions. This is like a quick Q&A. So, how did Jesse Chisholm influence the Chisholm Trail? He had extensive contacts. So, with the Cherokee, since he was half Cherokee, so he created a trail, and it drove right through Oklahoma, which is where the Indian reservations were. And since Jesse Chisholm had such great relations with the Cherokee and the Native Americans, they didn't affect the Chisholm Trail, and they didn't try to hurt anybody who went on it, and his contribution to the history and culture of the region was significant. What were the main reasons for the creation? It was he wanted to supply, facilitate, and explore. So what were the consequences? So as cattle need food, they alter the landscape by eating a lot of grass and lots of native bison. And the Native American tribes were also displaced since they wanted to move around instead of staying right in the middle, which caused some political issues and which created a stir. How does it relate to the politics and social issues of the time? Well, since the Civil War disrupted the cattle industry, since many of the owners were not around since they were fighting in the war, they're leaving millions of cattle just roaming around without owners or markets. Some former Confederate soldiers and supporters joined the cattle drives as a way to escape the harsh conditions, and they also needed a source of income since the Civil War is over. So, and here is, and that's basically it. Now let's go ahead and take a look. I'm going to show you the resources that we used. So here are the resources we use: wildwesthistory.org, britannica.com, Oklahoma History, oldwest.org, Chisholm Trail Museum, TSHA Online, The Story of Texas, and jleetpsb.weebly.com. Well, that's it. Maybe you can visit the Chisholm Trail. It's up in Kansas and somewhere around North Texas. So thank you for listening.